Hello, good to see you again. Welcome to Block 1, Solving Problems with Addition and Subtraction. Lesson 7. I'll share my screen. So, in your previous lesson, you learned how to use the column method of doing subtraction of decimals. In today's lesson, you're going to learn how to choose the most appropriate method to do addition and subtraction problems. So you're going to be thinking about whether to use a mental method, whether to use the column method, or whether to use a calculator. Okay, so we'll look at the most appropriate method to use in doing calculations by exploring some problems. But here again, I'm asking you for a favor. Like the video, share it with those you think will benefit, subscribe to the channel, and of course, you're going to be helping us grow our mission to educate the global population of children in mathematics, regardless of whether they can afford to pay for a teacher or not. Thank you. Right. So before we start, I would like you to do the retrieval practice questions in 3 minutes. All right. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered the questions, here are the answers. Let's discuss them. So for the first one, you were asked, how many minutes are there in 1 hour? There are 60 minutes in 1 hour. And then next, you're asked, what time is half an hour after 2:15? So 2:15 to 2:30, you've just used up 15 minutes. So you're left with another 15 minutes. So from 2:30, using up another 15 minutes will take you to 2:45 p.m. Next, you ask what time is 20 minutes before 2:15. So if we count back, 2:15 will from 2:15 p.m. it will take us to 2 p.m. And then we're left with 5 minutes to use up out of the 20 minutes. So that will take us to 5 minutes to 2 or 1:55 p.m. Let's do some new learning for today's lesson. Remember, the topic for today's lesson is for you to think about the most appropriate method to use to solve a problem. If we have this calculation, 218 plus 97, how would you approach it? Would you use mental method? Would you use column method? Or would you use a calculator? Which is quicker? Well, I would start by estimating the answer. That way, I would know if I've actually done the calculation, whether my answer is close enough to the estimate or not. So we know that 218 is closer to 200 and 97 is closer to 100. So if we do this calculation using estimation, our answer is going to be 300. However, we can use a number line to do the calculation using a little bit of estimation. So part of our solution will be by estimation. So we know that if we add 218 to 100, we will get 318. But wait for a minute. We were actually asked to add 97, not 100. What have you noticed? Oh, well, I'm sure you've noticed that we have added 3 more than we should have. So in our answer, we could actually take away that 3 that we added more of. So our answer should actually be 318. And of course, we can do that mentally. Subtract 3. So our answer is actually 315. We could also use a column method to do this. Now, if we use column method, by now you know how to do column method. So 8 ones add 7 ones will give us 15 ones. But we can do an exchange of 10 ones for 110. So which is here, the 10 column. Now, 110 add 9 tens will give us 10 tens plus the 110 which we exchange from here. That gives us 11 tens. But take note that 10 tens will give us 100. Okay, 10 tens is worth 100. So we can do our exchange here. And then now we can add the 2 to the 1 that we exchange. Our answer is 315. My question to you is, which one would you have done? So if you were in an exam, or let's say somebody asked you to do this calculation, and you were not actually required to write anything, you just needed to write an answer, I actually would do the mental method. Here is this one. If you remember from our previous lesson, we did a calculation like this: £10 subtract £6 58. Now, we know that the answer is £3.42. But what do you recognize when you compare this calculation with this one? Oh, well, notice that this one is 1 pence less than £10, and this one is 1 pence less than £6.58. So it means that our calculation will have the same answer. Check it out. Right? So we have the same calculation, but different numbers, is actually the same problem, but represented in a different number form. Okay? So the second column subtraction requires no exchanges. Did you notice that? So sometimes using mental methods can actually be a quicker way to get to the solution of the problem by thinking about the relationship between the numbers differently. All right, it's now time for you to do some practice questions. You've done some learning. Pause the video and answer question 1 in 3 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered question 1, here are the answers. So for question 1, you were asked to estimate the answer to this. Now, this is actually closer to 600, and this is closer to 100. So it's actually 600 plus 100. And then you're asked to use the column method to work it out, which you know how to do by now, and you can see. So you can actually see that the answer of our estimate is closer to the actual calculation. Next, you're asked to complete this number line. Have you noticed something? So we're adding 100, okay? So which means we're adding one more, one extra. So our answer has to be less than 1, right? And then next, you're asked, to discuss this with a partner, which we've discussed. I just discussed it now. And which method is more efficient? I actually would use the mental method. So I would have done this a long time ago to say, well, 627 plus 100 is 727. I just need to make my answer 1 less because I've added 1 more instead of 99. Okay. Pause the video and answer question 2 in 3 minutes. All right, assuming you've paused the video and you've answered question 2, here are the answers. Let's discuss them. Here you were asked to estimate the answer. So this is approximately 4,300, and then this will be 600. All right, so that is, subtract. So we have 4,300 minus 600, which will be 3,700. And then, of course, you can see the calculation is close. The actual calculation is close to the estimate. And then here, you're asked to complete the number line. So notice what has happened here. So we have 4,312. You can see how it's done in blocks of calculation. So 4,312 minus 500 takes us there. Then, so it's just meant for you to complete that number line. Which method is more efficient? Okay, you can now see that looking at different problems, you can see, which is more efficient. Now, personally, for me, I would use the column method, all right, if I'm required to write something, or I would do the estimate really quickly. Okay, so in this case, it's a matter of choice depending on the situation that you're dealing with. Pause the video and answer question 3 in 2 minutes. All right, assuming you've paused the video and you've answered question 3, here are the answers. So you're asked to work this out using a column method. So by now, you should know how to do your column method. And then here is the answer. And then you're asked to explain why 30 is correct. 30 is correct because the difference is the same. So here is what 30 did. Yeah. So 30 just simply made this one less and made this one less. All right. So 30 is correct. So the difference is the same. So use a column method to work this out, and you can see the difference is actually the same. Next, pause the video and answer question 4 in 3 minutes. All right, assuming you've paused the video and you've answered question 4, here are the answers. Let's discuss them. So here you were asked to adapt Teddy's method to work out the answers to these calculations. All right. So remember, that's Teddy's method. Yeah. And here are our answers. All right, let's do some new learning. Here is what Teddy says. Teddy says you should always use a calculator to perform calculations with large numbers. Do you agree with him? Let's look at an example. If we have, I think he's a man, not Teddy. If we have, for example, 40 million minus 6 million, do you need a calculator to do that, really? Well, no. I mean, think about it. I could just simply do 40 minus 6, which is 34. I just have million in front of the numbers. So my answer is 34 million. So I disagree with Amir. Here is our last example before you do your last set of practice questions. We're going to spot the mistakes as we do these calculations. So I want you to think about the mistakes and to learn from them, because these are typical mistakes students make, especially when they work with time. So here, a train leaves a station at 14:38 and arrives at its destination at 17:04. Now, you're asked, what is the duration of the journey? Now, here is what I did with a calculator. And I got the answer 2.66. But I said, okay, if my answer is 2.66, I'm going to now convert 66 minutes, because my assumption is that 0.66 represents 66 minutes. So I'll say, okay, let's convert 66 minutes so that we have, well, we know 60 minutes is equal to 1 hour. So altogether, this is 3 hours, 6 minutes. But is that really correct? Well, check this out. If we were to put this same event on a timeline, not number line, it's a lot like a number line, but we'll put the different times and the hours on the number line and check what happens. If we do this, we say, okay, we want to find out how long. So we've written a timeline here and we've put the hours in between the times of travel. So let's start counting. So we know that 14:38 to 3 o'clock or 1500 is 22 minutes. And we know that that's 1 hour. So 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock is 1 hour. 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock is 1 hour. And we know that the journey ended at 17:04. So 1700 to 17:04 is 4 minutes. So when we add all these times, we get 2 hours, 26 minutes. What has gone wrong? Oh, well, something you must know, and it's really important. When you're working with times, you need to be really careful. You need to know that your calculator is not going to help you much. You need to know that your calculator works in base 10 But when you work with times, you're working with base 60. You're looking at, you know, your 60 minutes portions. So, for example, if I'm working with time and I have 1.5 hour, my point 5 is actually equivalent to 30 minutes. All right. So it's really important you're careful when you're working with times. All right. It's now time for you to practice the other parts of the questions for this lesson. Pause the video and answer questions 5 and 6 in 4 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered questions 5 and 6, here are the answers. Here you're asked to write the answers to these calculations. So by now, you should be able to do these. You should know that we don't need a calculator to do this. It's fairly straightforward. Okay, you can see they are the same units, million and million, or the same unit of value. So that should be easy. Next, you're asked the number line shows how long it is from 5:45 p.m. to 6:20 p.m. And then here you ask, here she says, I did 6:20 to 5:45 on my calculator and got the answer 0.75. That's 3/4 of an hour, so it is 45 minutes. Well, you should know that, so the question you were asked, explain why the calculator gives the wrong answer. Okay, this is similar to what we did earlier in our previous example. So 5:45 to 6 p.m. is 15 minutes. 6 p.m. to 6:20 is 20 minutes. So that gives us 35 minutes. So the calculator would not give you the correct answer. Why? The calculator works in base 10. But when you're working with time, you need to know that you're working with knowing the fact that 60 minutes is equal to an hour. All right, pause the video and answer question 7 in 3 minutes. All right, I'm sure you've paused the video and you've worked really hard on these. Here are the answers. Celebrate your success. So you can see, so you draw on the number lines to find how long it's between these times. So we know that 2:30 to 3:07 is 37 minutes. So we can start to put our number line. By now, you should know how to draw your number line using your times, okay, your timeline. All right. And then we distribute the times in between. Okay. And that's the other one there. And that's the other one there. Okay. So these are the answers. All right. So mark your work. If you got this wrong, you can go over it again and again. So practice will make you really become proficient. Pause the video and answer question 8 in 2 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered question 8, here are the answers. So you were asked, decide whether a mental formal written, which is the column method, or calculator method would be best for each calculation. Circle your choice and then use your choosing method to find the answer. Well, here, this one could be easily done, all right, by saying, for example, 10 minus 350, which is 650, but you have taken 3 more, so you're going to add 3 to your answer. So this should be mental calculator, yeah? All right. So these are the answers, okay? So it's up to you to choose the one you think best fits the situation that you're working with. But I just showed you how I had to choose mental calculation here just by looking at the problem. All right, that brings us to the end of our lesson. So what have we learned so far? We have learned that by evaluating carefully the calculation you require to work with, to find a solution to, you can determine whether mental calculation is the best way to do it column method of either addition or subtraction or use of a calculator. And again, don't forget, when you're working with times, please use a timeline to do your calculations because your calculator works in base 10 and would give you the wrong answer. Until next time, thank you for working really hard and for learning. Take care and bye-bye.